Returning to silence, a journey through memory, grief, and the quiet spaces left behind in a house that time forgot. I came back to the house after 10 years. It looked smaller than I remembered. The paint was peeling, the gate creaked with a tired rhythm, and the vines had grown thick and wild across the windows like no one had bothered to cut them back. Maybe no one had. The front step still bore the chipped tile that Jihoon had tripped on countless times when we were kids. He blamed it every single time he was late for school. I used to think it was funny. Now, seeing it again, it made my chest tighten in a way I hadn't expected. I hadn't planned to stay long, just enough to handle the funeral, sign the paperwork, and leave again. But the house pulled me in before I had a chance to change my mind. It was as if the walls themselves remembered us, held our stories like old ghosts unwilling to be forgotten. Inside, the air smelled the same as it always had, a mixture of old wood, dust, and something faintly herbal, like dried lavender or sage lingering in hidden corners. The couch still had the dent where he always sat. His books remained lined up on the shelves exactly as he liked them, old paperbacks with cracked spines, some with pages dog-eared or folded in the corners. Nothing had been moved, nothing had changed. I walked slowly through the rooms, unsure what I was looking for, or if I was even looking for anything at all. The quiet made everything louder. The creak of the floor beneath my feet, the soft hum of the fridge in the kitchen, and my own breath echoing in the stillness. I stopped in the hallway where his jacket still hung on the hook. One sleeve was slightly twisted, as if he'd meant to fix it but never got around to it. Upstairs, his room looked lived in, not like a place abandoned or left behind. There was a half-filled mug on the desk and a laundry basket with socks spilling over the edge. I sat on his bed. It dipped under me like it remembered, like it had been waiting for someone to come back. In the drawer beside the bed, I found a notebook. It was plain, with a black cover and worn edges. His handwriting filled the pages, slanted, tight, and rushed. I flipped through it slowly, reading lines that were never meant for anyone else's eyes. He had written about work, about the days he couldn't get out of bed, and about how time felt stuck and heavy, dragging him down. He wrote about the lake, about wishing things were different. And then he wrote about her. I didn't need to see a name, I knew, Unji. She had been everything to him, and for a time she had been something to me too. Maybe that was the root of it all, the silence that grew between us, the distance that stretched like a canyon no words could bridge. He must have known. Or maybe he didn't. But if he did, he never said anything. He just got quieter and drifted further away until we barely spoke at all. When I left town, I told myself it was because I had to move forward. But really, I was running from him, from her, from all the things we didn't talk about. The last time I saw him, he looked tired, not just physically, but something deeper, something inside that no one could fix. I thought he was angry then. Now I wonder if he was just done. The accident happened on a Tuesday. That's all they called it, an accident. He slipped from the scaffolding. No one saw it happen, no one heard a sound. But after reading the notebook, I couldn't stop thinking about how it ended. The last page was blank. No closing sentence, no final words. Just nothing. I stayed longer than I'd meant to. Days turned into a week. I moved through the house like I was waiting for him to come back. I washed his dishes, made his bed, folded his clothes, and put them in boxes, as if packing away the past might somehow tame it. I didn't call anyone, not even my mother. She hadn't come to the funeral. She said she couldn't handle it. I didn't blame her. She lost her son long before he died. On the fourth day, I went down to the lake. It looked the same. Still water, soft wind, tall grass bending gently at the edge. We used to go there every summer. As kids, we'd throw rocks and bet who could get the most skips. As teenagers, we'd sit in silence, not because we had nothing to say, but because we didn't know how to say it. I sat on the dock until the sun started to dip, the quiet only broken by the small sounds of water brushing against the wooden planks. I watched the sky turn orange, then gray. It felt like something was ending, even though nothing was really happening. The next day, I opened the boxes I'd packed, took out his clothes, hung them back up in the closet. Something about putting them away felt final. I wasn't ready for that kind of final. At night, sleep was elusive. I kept hearing footsteps, but no one was there. I kept expecting the floor to creak outside the room and the door to open as if he might walk back through it. I started reading the notebook again, this time slower, searching for the details I might have missed the first time. He wrote about being forgotten, about people walking past him like he was invisible. He wrote about Yoonji's laugh, and how it felt like warmth, even when she wasn't near. He wrote about the sound of rain on the roof, and how it made him feel less alone. He never once mentioned me by name. I don't know if that made it better or worse. One morning, I found a letter tucked beneath a stack of receipts on the kitchen counter. It was addressed to her. Not sent, no stamp, no mark of postage. The paper was folded neatly, with no creases out of place. I didn't open it. I took the letter to the lake and sat with it in my hands. The wind picked up, and for a moment I thought about letting it go, watching it float away on the breeze, free from the weight of all this history. But I didn't. I put it in my jacket and walked back to the house. I didn't know where she was anymore. I didn't know if she'd even care. But I kept the letter. The days began to blend together. I stopped checking the calendar. I stopped setting alarms. I moved through the rooms like the house needed me, or maybe I needed it. My mother called once. She said she found Jihoon's old watch in a box of winter clothes. She said she wound it, and it still worked. I didn't say much, just listened to her voice and the ticking in the background. She asked if I was coming home. I didn't know how to tell her I already was. After 2 weeks, I cleaned the kitchen and really cleaned it. Scrubbed the grout, threw out the old tea bags, and rearranged the pantry. It didn't change anything, but it felt like something. I visited his grave before I left. There was no name yet, just a patch of dirt, uneven and quiet beneath the gray sky. I stood there for a long time, hands deep in my pockets, feeling the cold seep through the fabric of my coat. The earth felt raw and fragile, like it was still settling around something lost. I didn't say anything. There was nothing left to say. On the way back to the city, I stopped by the convenience store we used to visit after school. The building looked newer and brighter, with fresh paint and spotless windows, but the man behind the counter still recognized me. When he asked how Jihoon was doing, I told him he wasn't around anymore. He nodded slowly and returned to stacking gum, a quiet acknowledgement that felt heavier than any words could be. Sitting in the car, I hesitated before turning the engine on. The sky hung low and heavy, swollen with rain, a slow threat that pressed down on the world like a secret. I didn't mind the weight of it. Somehow, the heaviness outside matched what was inside me. My mind drifted to the letter again, the one addressed to Eunji, left unopened but carried close. I thought about her, wondering if she remembered the lake too. If she remembered the nights we all sat in the tall grass and said nothing, not because we had nothing to say, but because we were afraid of what words might unravel. I thought about Jihoon the way I used to think he was the strong one, the one who could bear everything and still stand tall. How I missed the signs that he was breaking inside, how I left without looking back when he needed me most. I started the car and pulled onto the familiar road. It stretched ahead, quiet and winding through the same countryside that held our memories. The ache inside me didn't lift. I didn't feel lighter yet, but the weight didn't press down quite as hard as before. Maybe grief doesn't leave. Maybe it just finds a place to rest inside you, folding itself into the corners of your heart. Maybe that's okay. Back in the house, the days passed in a slow blur. I kept the windows open whenever the weather allowed, letting the wind carry whispers through the rooms. I kept the notebook close, sometimes reading it again, sometimes just holding it in my hands, like a fragile thing. The house, with all its silence and shadows, became a kind of refuge. It held the past with gentle patience, waiting for me to face what I had left behind. In the mornings, I would walk down to the lake and sit on the dock. The water was still, reflecting the sky and the trees like a mirror. I watched the seasons change, how the grass bent under frost, how the sun set earlier each day, and how the air grew colder and sharper. I thought about all the summers we spent there. The way the sun had felt on our skin, the sound of laughter carried on the breeze, the way the world seemed endless and full of possibility. But time had moved on, even if the lake stayed the same. One evening, as the light faded and the first stars appeared, I found myself standing in the hallway where his jacket still hung. I reached out and touched the fabric. It was worn and soft, like a memory that had been pressed close for too long. I thought about the things left unsaid, the apologies that never came, the love that was tangled and complicated, and the distance that grew not out of hatred but out of silence. I folded the jacket carefully and placed it in a box with the rest of his things. The night stretched on, quiet and unyielding. Outside, the rain began to fall softly, tapping on the roof like a gentle reminder that life moved forward, even when we didn't want it to. When the time came to leave, I packed the last of the boxes into the car. The house looked empty now, but not forgotten. It held the echoes of a life shared, of friendships forged and frayed, and of love that was never simple, but always real. Driving away, I glanced back once. The windows caught the fading light, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of movement, a shadow, a memory, a whisper of him waiting. I didn't turn back. The road ahead was long and quiet, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like it was leading somewhere. Not away from the past, but through it. Grief had found its place inside me, a quiet companion rather than a crushing weight. And maybe that was enough to keep moving forward.